Post Millennial. Marvel's new queer series, Agatha All Along, to be, quote, gay explosion. The show has a lot of layers, and gay is one of them. I don't know why or what the point is, but it's a new show on Disney Plus. It came out the other day. Agatha All Along is following the series WandaVision. It's a miniseries. And Post Millennial, you're incorrect. It was released yesterday, not on 25th. They put up 2 episodes. And it's about Agatha as a witch. She lost her powers. Wanda from Avengers took them from her. And of course, when they do a show like this, here's what they have to say about it. Quote, witches are queer inherently just because we are outcasts, and set aside for many reasons. The show shows a really good representation of different types of people and that we can all use the power we have within to go forward and be great. I've always looked up to Wanda Sykes as another black queer woman in comedy. Living her truth is really inspiring and awesome. Disney has decided to make shows that are overt in their politics, much like conservatives did with their old Christian films that people used to make fun of. It seems like when the left decided to adopt what we refer to as non-theistic religion or secular religion, they've begun to fall into the old traps that the old Christian conservatives would fall into of making preachy, over-the-top ideological content instead of making simple comedy with the message being underneath or passive. Now, Disney's lost $1 billion on a bunch of their movies. The Marvel movies are doing worse and worse in the box office. Captain Marvel, talk about a nightmarish mistake. You got Robert Downey Jr., who is, the $20 million guy or whatever. They're paying him $20 million for these movies, $60 million for these movies. He's going to retire, and they say Brie Larson is going to be the new linchpin of the Marvel universe. She's a girl boss who's insufferable, that everybody hates. Her movie fails. I mean, don't get me wrong, Captain Marvel, the film, did well. Then they make a sequel to it, The Marvels. It bombs. They try cutting the film down, desperate to do something with it. They have not learned their lesson. Or actually, here's my question for you guys. Does Disney actually know they're going to burn all their money doing this, but they're cultish, communist zealots, and they're going to keep doing it anyway?
Yeah, I think some of it is what we talked about. They're putting the message before the quality of the art. I think also it's a little bit of what Mary was just saying about historically the problem with conservatives is just, you have the institutions that are stopping us and all of that kind of thing, and that's true. But also just there aren't as many conservatives who have the ability to be creative in that way. And I think that now on the left, they're suffering from the same problem. And so in a company like Disney, they might not realize that this stuff sucks. I mean, they might not have the talent. And I don't think they have the artistic money. Right. They might not have the artistic talent and sensibilities to even know how to make something that's good. I mean, which was never, say what you want about Disney historically, but they used to create obviously like masterpieces of their genre. And I'm not sure they even have the ability to do that now, even if you take the politics outside of it.
I think it's because they're overstaffed with people who think the same way. When I went to CPAC in like 2012, I was, I think, in high school, maybe a little bit younger. And I remember at the time, the Batman movie had come out, and there was a big talk about, like, what's the messaging behind this? This is actually a conservative movie. And I remember one of the speakers said, parents, if you have kids who are trying to decide what they want to do, don't send them to DC if you want them to have an impact on America. Send them to Hollywood. And it's like, well, Hollywood is a terrible place where horrible things happen, and they don't share, good values. But it just made it so all of the writers who are rising through the ranks, who eventually get a seat at these tables, were completely bent in one direction. We sort of, if you're a conservative, you sort of self-selected out of this industry because you decided it was lost, but therefore it became more lost. And you have a bunch of people looking at each other being like, I think this is a good idea. And Etsy sells a lot of queer witch products, so clearly somebody's buying this stuff. There's no barometer for normalcy.
Well,
I hilarious about parents being like, okay, well, I can't send my kids to Hollywood, that's Sodom. So they're like, well, let's send them to the moral bastion that is DC. That'll take care of them. That'll keep them.
Well, so I have a question for you guys. Were you always, I don't know about you, Ben, how do you done? Are you conservative, Christian?
Slightly to the right of Genghis Khan.
Oh, okay, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Have you guys always been conservative, Christian, right-leaning, etc.?
I have, yeah. That's how I was raised.
Because wasn't Michael Knowles like a liberal when he was younger, and now he's much more, don't know, stoic and Catholic.
That guy's still a lib. No, yeah, I think he talks about how he kind of fell out of the faith and came back.
I just wonder if what we're seeing is that there are, the people like Mary mentions, the conservatives traditionally don't think outside the box, but you end up with a lot of middle of the road types who normally identified as more liberal because there was more outside the box thinking and creativity. Mm-hmm. And now they're all death cultists who have lost their minds. And so the middle of the road people have aligned themselves with conservatives, giving that the creativity and that creative force to the right. That's why you're seeing woke, psychotic, gay explosion TV shows that burn billions of dollars. And on the right, you're seeing an increasing talent pool and more success.
Justin Folk has talked about this a lot, where he refers to all of us as just the new punk rock, the new counterculture. We're the ones raging against the machine while Rage the Machine is doing concerts.
Raging on behalf of the machine.
Well, exactly. Sponsored by, Big Pharma. So I do think there is going to continue to be a shift where people who are, questioning not just the regime, but just where we've gotten to in a cultural standpoint, will be finding themselves aligned with conservative messaging and conservative values more often. So I do think there is a chance that we'll be able to have a new generation of quote-unquote conservative artists, which is probably an oxymoron.
That also requires us, though, to cultivate artistic talent on the right, which I think that we still are. We're in the infancy of figuring out. I mean, broadly, when I say we, I mean conservatives are in the early days of figuring out how to do that, and we haven't been very good at that in the past. And because what ends up, as you said, typically if you're conservative and you want to change the culture in some way, you go to a think tank. And now it's like you start a podcast. Nothing against podcasts, obviously, it's what I do every day. But you get into the commentary space. And I still think that there's a lot of, and there's definitely a place for that. As I said, as someone who does it, there's a place for commentary. But I think that there's still probably a lot of creative talent on the right that's being kind of wasted on just offering commentary, and no one's coming along and saying, "Look, you have you have something else you can do, and we're going to help. We're going to fund you. We're going to help you figure out how to do it."
I completely agree. I mean, look at the Daily Wire, for instance. Wasting Ben Shapiro's talents. That guy should be playing violin in concerts and orchestras. No, he could, though. I mean, the dude's really good at it.
And he's also a best-selling rap artist, as we know.
That is excellent. But, I'm curious what you think, Mary. You're younger, and you're mentioning this, conservatives don't think outside the box. I'm wondering if you're seeing younger people who lean right having more creativity than you'd expect, or something like that.
Honestly, what's been on my mind lately is maybe I'm not a conservative. I know I'm right wing, but I think that progressives and conservatives kind of think the same way, where they see history in this linear sense, where we're either ascending toward progress or we're descending into dystopian hellscape. And we're either going to create that dystopia or comment on it from the sidelines. And maybe there needs to be some kind of rise of a right-wing progressivism. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know what label to put on it, but people who care about innovating, people who care about creating and adapting. That's what conservatives have proven themselves incapable of doing, is adapting to the current circumstances. But
do you mean retaining moral foundations in, I don't necessarily want to say Judeo-Christian, but around that, what do you mean by right-wing?
Something I want to draw attention to, actually. Last year, I went to a music festival that's called Catholic Palooza. Have you heard of this?
Uh-oh.
It sounds terrible, but
tell
me more.
It sounds like Lollapalooza, but Catholic.
Yeah, that's why it sounds terrible. Is it better than
There
that?
was a second iteration of it earlier this year in New Jersey, and I didn't get to go to that one. But they brought in a bunch of these Catholic independent musicians and had them perform in front of an audience of young Catholic people, and they were normal. They were actually normal young people. And I know it sounds really nerdy, and
but was the music good?
Sounds bad. Yes, the music was good.
Okay, good.
They were doing metal versions of Ave Maria. They actually had some.
There's this post-punk act named Hallowed who headlined last year, and he's really talented, so big shout out to him. But
it genuinely wasn't like a cringe fest. And I know that might sound shocking to the audience listening right now, but I think there is something bubbling up with young creative people who actually have morals.
And the not to get off on kind of a tangent, but the music at this festival, was it all Catholic music in the sense that it was about religion and about Catholicism and about God? Were they also performing songs about other things, like sort of the?
It was a mix. It was a mix of both.
Because this is one thing, and I don't follow Christian music that I've never listened to it that much. But one of my complaints about Christian music typically is, first of all, I think often it's not very good.
Yeah.
But also there's this idea that like if you're making Christian music, it always has to be about Jesus explicitly. Which nothing wrong with singing praises to Jesus. Don't get me wrong, but if you perform a song about anything that's true and beautiful, it is Christian in a sense, and so we also want music that's about like the whole scope of human existence.
I mean, there were songs about like suffering, like that's a universal concept that people can relate to. It wasn't just like, the kind of Christian rock concert that you're thinking of in a mega church and like a strip mall. You know what I mean?
Go back in time. Look at lyrics from the 40s, 50s, 60s. Christian themes in music was ubiquitous. And it was normal for a pop song not to overtly praise Jesus, but to passively mention something like you're listening to a song and they mention, I was leaving church on Sunday when I saw my friend. And it's not that it's a Christian song, but elements of Christianity and the social practices were ingrained in the culture, as they were. And this came out in music. Moving forward, you get to the 90s, I will say you had bands like Creed, which were massive, and they're not overtly in their big hits singing, praise Jesus, but Higher, the song is clearly about, can you take me higher? A better place, a better world, a world he dreams of. And then With Arms Wide Open about having a kid and, the joy that he feels from it. These things are still in line with that same moral worldview. And that was like a massive, multi-platinum band at the time.
Yeah.
Now music is degenerate, evil, satanic.
Even in the 2000s, there was like a huge surge of like Christian metalcore.
Yeah, Korn.
That kind
Korn
of
was Christian?
Was it Korn Christian? Am I making this up?
I don't know about Korn specifically.
I don't know about that because the song Got the Life, he's saying, God told me I already got the life.
For Today, Memphis Mayfire. I don't know if anybody in the chat is going to know the examples that I'm saying, but like other
was
bands
Korn
like
Christian though? Can we?
Paramore originally, like Hayley Williams was an outspoken Christian.
She has a cross
Flyleaf
tattoo.
as well.
Guitarist from Korn is Christian.
Oh,
Yeah, I think they're Christian now. I think those guys are Christian now, I believe.
Okay,
Did
well,
an interview
I
with
Former
the
guitarist.
Revolver that says in 2021 that said, "Am I still Christian?" So there's obviously some kind of influence in the band. I mean, I think that is one of the distinctions. Like, do you have to be always singing about like here is the Bible verse and here is exactly what you should be saying,
don't wanna
go to
or
hell,
are you just a Christian who then lives life and operates their business in a way that reflects that?
Here's the issue, though. You mentioned bands like Paramore. I mean, they're woke.
Right. They kind of shrugged off that identity relatively quickly when it became.
Did they ever actually have it? And the argument we hear from a lot of these individuals is that Christianity can be inclusive. You go to Shepherdstown in West Virginia, and the churches have pride flags and trans flags. And it's like, well, that's a wholly different ideology. Like, by all means, go have your ideology, go believe whatever you want to believe, just leave me alone. But the Christian faith does not like it's oil and water. You can't put them in the same.
Yeah, that doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a pro-trans Christianity,
Well,
pro-abortion Christianity.
You're watching churches splinter over this, right? Like the Episcopalian Church is having a big issue with this. The Methodist Church is splitting over this issue. And so I think that there is sort of, maybe not what we're talking about with a conservative progressivism, but I think there is sort of a renaissance of what are conservative values in America, what are American traditions that we want to carry on, how do we define ourselves? And I think actually art is a really big key to this. Like if you have young people who are saying, I want to live by these values, which we would normally ascribe as being maybe more socially conservative or whatever else, and they're the ones also saying, well, I am now creating the paintings and I am now creating the movies and I am now creating the board games or whatever of these like tokens of culture we need to sort of have without having to always say there's a Bible verse on literally everything, I think you will see a big change. But it's incremental over time. And right now, like when you talk about Hollywood, yes, I think there should be young, filmmakers who don't just have the same ideology. On the other hand, does that mean that we have to have an outside Hollywood where they go, or do they go in to the institutions and say, oh, well, I'm here and you have to deal with me? It's hard to say, because otherwise it is difficult to get funding as a young creative. You have to go somewhere, you have to support yourself, you need someone to back your art for you to be able to make it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the issues too, though, is when we talk about Christian art doesn't always have to be explicitly announcing itself as such. But one of the issues, this is also one of the challenges you have as a conservative or a Christian trying to make any kind of art, any kind of art form, is that there's a kind of loud voice within the conservative audience that gets very angry if you try to do anything that is not painting within kind of the lines that have been established. And we ran into that with both movies. I mean, I remember What Is a Woman? There was a big controversy among some particular Christian commentators with that movie, because they were mad that at the end of the film, we did not have a gospel message that they wanted. I go in the end of that movie, I go in and talk to Alyssa, my wife, to find out the answer to What Is a Woman. And they wanted her to like pull out the Bible and quote it to me. And because she didn't, they thought that ultimately the movie was a miss. And, running to the same thing now with this movie, and there are people that are...
Well, someone wrote an op-ed about it saying that you were using deception.
Yeah. There's some Christian commentators, and there's an op-ed in, I think it's World, the website World, where they were saying that we used deceptive tactics, and so it's immoral and unethical, and... they like the movie, but it's interesting because they say they like the movie, but really it shouldn't exist because it's founded in this evil premise of using deception. But again, we run into this thing where you have some in the audience that you try to go outside of the lines a little bit and do something a little bit provocative, perhaps. And there are some in the audience that just are not. They don't want that. They're very resistant to it.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.